4. So today we're going to look at the story of Joseph from the perspective of the 5 coats of Joseph, which you see up on the stage here today. We're going to jump right into the story. Genesis chapter 37 and verse 2. It says, "This is the account of Jacob's family line." Jacob was also known as who? Israel. So we get the nation of Israel, right? Joseph, a young man of 17. Anybody 17 here? Bill Hayes, all right, good. Rachel back there. So 17 was tending the flocks with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. Obviously, shocker here, not a good thing. How many wives did he have? 4 wives. How many kids? 12. Okay, 12 sons. Yeah. All right. So here we go. And what do we find out? And he brought their father a bad report about them. So often when we look at the story of Joseph, we think about this kind of snotty brat of a kid bringing up these tattletaling on his brothers. But it doesn't necessarily say that, does it? It simply says he brought a bad report. They could have been doing something that was really bad, and he needed to share that with his parents. We don't know that. But we do know that he did share that bad report with his father. Next we hear in verse 3, "Now Israel," or also Jacob, "loved Joseph more than any of his other sons." Ouch. "Because he had been born to him in his old age." Also we know that he was born from Rachel, the wife that he loved more. Here's a word of advice. Just stick with one woman. It'll work better for you, right? "And so he made an ornate robe for him, a coat of many colors." Now it's interesting, this coat of many colors actually is something indicative of rulership. So somebody that would rule would have something like this. So this coat was more than just a fancy coat that the brothers said, "I want to have one that looks like this." This is indicative of the fact that maybe Jacob wanted to make him in charge of his other brothers. Now, obviously, if you are Reuben, the oldest, you'd be like, "What? You're going to choose this kid over me? I am your oldest son. I am the one that's supposed to have that honor." But yet, he is given this robe, this coat of many colors. There he is, picture to help you think about this. His brothers in the background, not happy about this. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him. They actually hated him. What's behind that? What's behind that hatred? Jealousy and Satan, yeah. They were hating him because of all this attention of their father, because their father wanted to give him the reins of the family, and they could not speak a kind word to him. Now, to make things more interesting, Joseph had a dream. Now, was this a daydream? Did he make this up? No, who gave it to him? God gave him a dream. And because of this dream, they hated him all the more. What was it? Well, he had this dream that 12 sheaves were together, and his sheaves stood the tallest, and all the other sheaves bowed down to him. And to make this clear, his brothers understood this. They said, "Do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us?" So remember, adding to it this coat that indicated rulership. They have that in the back of their heads. They see that their father seems to love him more. And now he's having this dream that they're going to bow down to him. Who does this kid think he is? And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. Now to add this, he has another dream. And he told it to his brothers. This time there's the sun and the moon and 11 stars. They are bowing down to him. Now this one even made his father mad, but his brothers were very upset about this. His father rebuked him for this. His brothers hated him, but his father did consider maybe this is something that might happen in the future. I want to stop here, and then we're going to fast forward in time a little bit because we got a lot to cover in a little bit of time. And so here we see Jacob sending his son off to check on his brothers. Now, they're all shepherds, so they're sent out. Remember in Psalm 23, we hear about the shepherd bringing him off to a place to pasture. And so the brothers are all going off into another place. And Jacob sends his son Joseph to go and check on them, see how they're doing, make sure they don't need anything, and then come back. Now his brothers are there, and all of a sudden they see Joseph in the distance, and they begin contemplating. They've already been talking about this. You ever been in a place where you're upset about something and you're talking to your friends all about this? Here these brothers, they're talking about the coat of many colors. They're talking about him wanting to rule over him, these dreams. And then they have this idea. They saw Joseph in the distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. Not just hatred, they wanted to actually kill him. Here comes that dreamer, they said to each other. Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams. So not only does he want to murder them, they've already kind of covered their bases. They came up with their alibi, right? What's their alibi? Ferocious animals attacked him. So when Reuben, as the oldest son, heard this, he tried to rescue him from their hands. Let's not take his life. He's upset too. Guys, I'm mad about this too. I'm the firstborn, but let's not do anything hasty here. Let's not take his life. Don't shed any blood. Throw him into this cistern here in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him. Reuben said this to rescue him from them and take him back to his father. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the ornate robe he was wearing. I want you to stop and put yourself in Joseph's spot, because we look often at the brothers. What would it be like to be Joseph? Did you ask to be treated better than all your brothers? It's kind of like, have any of you been in the spot where you're the teacher's pet? Anybody? That's a very dangerous place to be in, right? Because you like the attention of the teacher, you like the A's, you like doing well, but then if the other classmates hate you, it's a bad thing, right? And so Joseph didn't ask for this, but yet all this attention, he didn't ask for the dreams. And here he is, and the sign of affection of his father is ripped. It is taken off of him. And so he's thrown into a pit, and he's there in the bottom of the pit. And I want to stop and talk about this coat of many colors here. And I want to look at, what does this symbolize? Well, this was a sign of the favor of his father. And I think about, for us, have we received favor for something that we didn't deserve? What would you say that would be? Yeah, your father, your wife. Salvation, right? None of us deserve to be saved. We couldn't do enough to work for it. But yet this gift was given to us, and we didn't even ask for it. Just like Joseph, there was a promised future of possibly being a ruler. And for us, there's a promised future of heaven. But we see that with this coat, there's come some other things. There's jealousy. There's rejection. There's hatred. Life is threatened. Did any of you suffer any persecution when you came to Christ? As in, you had brothers and sisters, when you told them about your relationship with God, all of a sudden your relationship turned, and they began to hate you, or they began to do things against you. What fuels that? Sometimes it's jealousy. They see things going right in your life, and they don't think that that's fair. Are you better than us or something? What do you think? And so here we see jealousy, rejection, hatred, and his life is being threatened, all associated with this one coat that was now torn from him. Let's continue on in the story. As the brothers sat down to eat their meal, just think about this. Here they take their brother, throw him off, they throw him in the pit, and it's just everyday normal stuff. They're going and eating now, right? They don't care about what they've done. They looked up and they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. Their camels were loaded with spices, balm, and myrrh, and they were on their way to take them down to Egypt. There they are, Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood. At least they had some sense of belonging, that he is their brother. But they do want to make a profit off of him. So his brothers agreed. So when the Midianite merchants came by, his brothers pulled Joseph up out of the cistern and sold him for 20 shekels of silver to the Ishmaelites, who took him to Egypt. And so imagine, put yourself in that place. He is being taken. Not only has his brothers done this to him, now he is taken away from all that he knows and loves. Now Reuben returned to the cistern and saw that Joseph was not there. He tore his clothes in anguish. He went back to his brothers and said, "The boy isn't here. What happened?" And so from there, Joseph is taken and he is brought and sold at the market. Potiphar buys him, and then he is forced into hard labor. He starts at the bottom, does what it takes. But we see, even in this place, how many of you would just want to give up on life if that happened to you? Imagine if you were taken right now and you were taken to Pakistan and you were made to be a slave for somebody in Pakistan. Would you want to give up on life? But yet, Joseph, we don't see him giving up on life. He is at rock bottom, but he begins to work. And he begins to do his very best, working hard at everything that he is given. And all of a sudden, his owner, Potiphar, and see if this will not work for us. Okay, good. It says that Joseph found favor in Potiphar's eyes and became his attendant. Potiphar put him in charge of his household, and he entrusted to his care everything that he owned. So he was brought to that special place. And so now we see the second coat that Joseph has. It's the coat of a servant, but yet not just a regular servant. He is elevated to the top level to be the best servant in charge of everything of his household. Now this servant's cloak right here, that was the sign of the favor of a father. This is the sign of the favor of Potiphar. Now you think things are starting to get good. He's starting to work his way up, and finally things are getting back to at least a little bit normal, a little bit better. And then all of a sudden, he was a handsome man, and he caught the attention of Potiphar's wife. And several times Potiphar's wife would be coming up to him and said, "Come to bed with me, come to bed with me." And Joseph says, "How could I do that to my master? He's entrusted everything to me. I will not do that." And so finally, you know the story in verse 12, she caught him by his cloak and said, "Come to bed with me." And so he has this choice. Some of you may have the same choice. She is holding on to his cloak. What does that cloak represent to him? Man, he was struggling at the bottom. He is left alone here in this place. And finally, he's got to a place that's halfway decent. And this woman holds that cloak that could change everything for him. He has a choice in that moment. Do I give up my integrity, or do I give in to this? And so he left the cloak in her hand and ran outside of the house. And obviously you know the story that rips, and she yells out to all the people. When Potiphar comes home, things are very difficult. So remember, what do we see in this cloak? The brothers rip that cloak off of him and change his life. Here we see Potiphar's wife rip that cloak, and it changes his life forever. Let's stop and talk about this cloak just for a minute. With this cloak kind of represents abandonment. His brothers abandon him. It represents slavery. He's forced to do things that he did not want to do. But he doesn't stop there. He works hard. He makes the best of a bad situation, and he experiences the favor of Potiphar. Let's continue on in our story. We know what happens. Potiphar finds out about this. And normally speaking, do you know what someone of his authority would do? Kill him. But some reason, and I believe it was God, and also maybe Potiphar knew about his wife's issues. Who knows? he decides simply to put Joseph away. And so Joseph is put in the prison where some of the king's attendants are sometimes put in prison. So there we see Joseph in that difficult place, and he is given another outfit to wear, another coat to wear. Genesis 40:20 says, Joseph's master took him and put him in prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. But while Joseph was there in prison, the Lord was with him. Notice how the Lord was with him throughout all of this. He showed him kindness and granted him what? Favor in the eyes of the prison warden. Now, if anybody had a reason to give up on life, it had to be Joseph, right? He was stolen from his family. He was forced to be a slave. Finally got some level of comfort in his life, and then it's ripped away, and now he is in a dungeon. He's in a prison. But yet he doesn't give up on life. He gives his very best, and God grants him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. So the warden put Joseph in charge of all those held in the prison, and he was made responsible for all that was done there. The warden paid no attention to anything under Joseph's care because the Lord was with Joseph and gave him success in whatever he did. And now we see the other cloak. The first cloak represented the favor of a father. The second, the favor of Potiphar. The third, the favor of the prison warden. Now you may be thinking, well, this is a great thing, right? Well, he's still in the dungeon, right? Still a difficult situation, which we'll see in the story a little bit later. So one day, you know the story, the cupbearer and the baker for Pharaoh come in the place and they have a dream, each of them. The cupbearer has a dream that goes like this. He's got grapes and they have 3 branches to them. And in his dream, he is able to squeeze these grapes into the Pharaoh's cup, and then he serves it to Pharaoh. And he asks, what could this mean? And Joseph then interprets that dream for him. Basically, in 3 days from now, you're going to be reinstated, and you'll serve Pharaoh again. And he gives him this one thing. If you're able to go there, or when you go, please don't forget me. I've been in this dungeon. I was once in the land of the Hebrews, but I was sold into slavery. I have done nothing to deserve this. Please remember me. Now, you know the story of the baker here. He has a different dream, and his dream goes like this. He's got 3 baskets of bread and other kind of pastries on his head that's served to Pharaoh. And then all of a sudden he sees these birds coming and eating of these. And he begins to interpret this dream to him. And he says that those represent 3 days, and 3 days from now, birds are going to be eating your flesh. Pharaoh's going to have you killed. So 3 days later, these things happen. The cupbearer is reinstated, and the baker is hanged. So surely the cupbearer remembers, right? No, he is forgotten. Verse 23 tells us the chief cupbearer, however, did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. How did it feel? Do you think that Joseph was like, this is day 2, surely he'll remember and talking about it. I know it's been a week, but he'll remember, right? I wonder how long Joseph went wondering, feeling forgotten. Did he feel forgotten by God in those moments as well? But God never forgot him. We know next that there's a lot of dreams in this story. Pharaoh began to have a dream. And in his dream, there were 7 calves. And these are big cows, sign of plentifulness. And then these sleek cows. You don't have any of these, do you, Jason? No, okay, good. This is a scary dream for you, right? So these skinny cows come and they eat up the fat cows. And this is very troubling to him. Afterwards, he sees another dream. And in this dream, he sees 7 heads of grain. And then all of a sudden, these sickly heads of grain come up and overtake the 7 healthy grains. And he doesn't know what's going on. And he begins to ask for help, if anybody could help interpret this. Now, finally, the cupbearer remembers and he talks to Pharaoh about Joseph. And I want to stop here because we know something is going to happen. Something is going to be taken. This garment is going to be taken away from Joseph, and he's going to be given another one. But let's stop and talk about this prisoner's coat that he wore. He was wrongly accused. He was suffering. He was lonely. But even in that spot, he worked hard. He made the best of a bad situation. That coat represents the father's favor, Potiphar's favor, the warden's favor. Now let's move to the next cloak. He is brought before Pharaoh and he interprets the dream. He says, these are 7 years of plentiful that you're going to experience. And then after them, there's going to be 7 years of famine. Here's what you need to do. You need to find somebody who will take part of those 7 good years, store up that equipment, and then pass it out during the years of famine. So Pharaoh, here's what Pharaoh does, verse 41. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his finger and put it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in robes of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. So here, this one is torn, and in its place he is given a different coat. And this coat represents royalty, second in command. He had him ride in a chariot as his second in command, and people shouted before him, make way. Thus he put him in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, but without your word no one will lift a hand or foot in all of Egypt. And so we see Joseph doing the job during the 7 years of abundance. He's collecting and storing all the grain up from the people. And then the years of famine come where they're not able to grow, and people begin to come to Pharaoh and say, can we give us food so that we can eat? And he sends them to Joseph. Now, meanwhile, back at the brothers' place in Jacob, we see that they're suffering from famine as well. And so Jacob says, I heard that in Egypt they have food. Go ahead and go there. And so they go and they appear before Joseph. And just put yourself in Joseph's spot. The one who put you in the pit, the ones who stole that cloak from you, the one that forced you to a place where you didn't even know the language, where you were forced into slavery, the one that led to being put in a dungeon and prison, they are right now coming before you, and all of a sudden you see them kneel before you. And what are you remembering in that moment? That dream where the sheaves bowed down and the stars bowed down to me. But yet he's angry. He's angry about what they did to them. There's bitterness growing on inside of them. So he decides to accuse them of being a spy. He leaves one brother there with him, and he sends the people back. And he says, don't come back unless you bring the youngest son, Benjamin. And so they finally realize their need and send Benjamin back. He's able to appear before him. I don't have time to tell you the whole story. You can read this on your own. But what takes place here with Benjamin, he's falsely accused of stealing something from Pharaoh. And he says to all the other brothers, you go, but I'm going to keep Benjamin here. And finally we see the brothers realizing their sin. And they say, no, this would kill our father. This is our fault. And so they agree to take his place. And at this moment, it's too much for for Joseph to take in. And he weeps. He sends all his people out. And ultimately, he takes care of them. He feeds them. They're excited to see each other. Again, for sake of time, we know that the brothers were very scared. But once they finally got the word that he was going to take care of them, it was good. Now, Joseph said something very important when his brothers came to him. He said, don't be afraid. It wasn't just you who did this to me. God is the one who brought me for a time like this so that I could provide for Egypt and also provide for you. Great insight. We know the greatest part of this story here afterwards is the reuniting of Jacob and Joseph. They're able to see one another. excited. You like their little dance there? I want to stop and just look at this coat here, and let's talk about it for a minute. This represented the blessings of God and authority, but even in this time of blessing, Joseph still had to deal with bitterness. He had to learn to forgive, and through this, he learned to see God's hand even in difficult times. Now, maybe one that you have not thought about. Genesis chapter 50, verse 24, Joseph said to his brothers, I am about to die. This coat is going to be torn off of him. It's going to be taken from him. But God will surely come to your aid and take you up out of this land to the land he promised on oath to Abraham, Isaac, and to Jacob. What is he talking about? You're going to be brought back to that promised land. This is not your home. And Joseph made the Israelites swear an oath and said, God will surely come to your aid, and then you must carry my bones up from this place. I want to stop and talk about this. In Hebrews 11:22, we see about the faith of Joseph in believing for this. It says, by faith, Joseph, when his end was near, spoke about the exodus of the Israelites from Egypt and gave instructions concerning the burial of his bones. So at his deathbed, he believes that God will fulfill his promise. He will bring the Israelites back. And that's accounted to him as faith. And because of that, I believe that Joseph is in heaven with God right now. And so he has received a royal robe, a white robe. He's with the Father. What about this redeemed robe? In this, we see the hand of God, the plan of God, and the blessings of God. Mel, would you mind coming? I want to just really briefly, and this is the reason why I'm sharing this today, and I believe God brought us here for a purpose and a plan. Each one of these we see favor. The favor of a father, the favor of Potiphar, the favor of the prison warden, the favor of Pharaoh, the favor of God. Our story might be kind of swapped, you know? We might have really great times in the beginning and have kind of those prison slavery times at the end. It might be mixed up in our life. Do you see that in your life? Have you had times that have been really difficult that you've gone through? Have you ever felt like you're at that bottom of the pit and saying, God, why are you allowing this to happen? Why did this happen in my job? Why is this happening in my relationship? And all I want you to see here is a couple of things. One, even in the darkest time, remember God has not forgotten you, right? Mm-hmm. Remember that God was with him at every step of the way. And he did the best that he could in that situation. He didn't curl up and die in those moments. He kept and he gave his very best in each and every one of them. And what we see throughout this story is that God was weaving each one of these details to bring them to the right place. You know, I often struggle. God is sovereign, and so he can do whatever he wants. I don't know that necessarily he used the hatred of his brothers. He used Potiphar's wives, even though he didn't cause these things. He used the prison warden, the cupbearer. I don't necessarily see him as the cause of the evil that's there, but he's able to take each and every one of these things and he weaves them into his perfect plan to provide for everyone in the future, ultimate destiny that's there. The reason why I say that is some of you are going to have difficult times in your life, and you're going to say, God, how in the world could you allow this to happen? And, you know, some things God puts in your life, some things God allows in your life. You know, he's not going to make us do anything, right? We're not robots. And if we're not robots, that means that people are not robots either, right? That means, I mean, we've heard of stories of Yvonne's husband was murdered, right? Did God cause that to happen? I don't think that he did. But he is able to weave that and to make something good out of that. And so what I want to encourage you on today is don't give up if you find yourself in the pit. Don't give up if you find yourself in the prison. Hopefully no one will see you there, but don't give up if you're in difficult times like this. Even when you're going through the good times, there's still struggles there. Don't give up. Keep pursuing after God, and he will bless you. Will you stand with me? If you wouldn't mind, just bow your heads and close your eyes just for a moment. I don't know where you are in your life. I don't know what coat you are wearing. I don't know if what you thought was a great thing was ripped off of you, like what happened to Joseph many times in his life. But if you're in that spot right now, and it's a difficult spot, and you wonder why, I just want you to stop and see God in the middle of your situation. That he has not left you. He's not forsaken you. And I want you to believe that he is able to do exceedingly and abundantly above all that you can ask or think. He can take what looks like a mess of cords just hanging down in our life, and he can weave them into something amazing and beautiful. He's a sovereign God. He loves you and he cares about you. With your heads bowed and eyes closed just for a moment, I just want to know, are there any of you here today that would say, you're kind of in that pit experience or in a difficult situation in your life? And if you're honest with yourself, there's been some questions that you've had. It's been difficult for you, and you just want prayer that God would move in your situation. If that's you, would you just raise your hand? I want to be praying for you. Yeah, yes, yeah. Others of you. Yes. Yep. Yeah. Let's just go to the Lord. Pour out your heart before him. God, I thank you that you are there in the storm. You're there in the difficult time. And Lord, for each person that raised their hand, and maybe there's some that didn't raise their hand, but they're going through a difficult time right now in their life, I pray that you would show them yourself, that they are not forgotten. And Lord, that same strength and that same favor that you put in Joseph's life, I pray that you would extend it to each and every one of them right now. That, Lord, if things are difficult, that they would be the very best that they can be in that difficult time. Lord, that you would give them your peace. And every time it seems like the enemy takes something from them or a coat away from them, Lord, I pray that you would give them something better. That each and every time that they would see your favor on their life. And Lord, for all of us, help us to see the big picture, that we are not forgotten, that you are always moving, and you have a plan to prosper us and not to harm us, to give us a hope and a future. And Lord, we look forward to that day when we will see you face to face and experience the glory and the peace and all that you have for us. Thank you, Lord Jesus.